South Korea is currently the site of a demographic collapse with no historical parallel. The country's birth rate has dropped to 0.72 children per woman, well below the 2.1 needed to keep a population stable. The trajectory is so steep that Elon Musk has warned the peninsula could eventually be empty, describing the situation as a population cliff that threatens the very survival of the nation. This isn't a passive decline, it is an active withdrawal. Since 2018, thousands of women have joined 4B movement, a radical feminist strike built on 4 principles: no sex, no dating, no marriage, and no childbirth with men. At the same time, Korean men are exiting the local market in record numbers. After a decade of decline, international marriages suddenly spiked by over 18% in a single year, as men look abroad for partners who don't share these local tensions. These aren't just isolated lifestyle choices. They are the symptoms of a society where the two sexes have stopped cooperating, effectively launching a mutual boycott of the traditional family unit. While the physical results are most visible in Seoul, the underlying breakdown, the divorce between masculine and feminine expectations, is a template. South Korea is the patient zero for a social fracture that is now appearing across the West. The fracture began when the social contract for women became a losing proposition. In South Korea's patriarchal structure, women face the world's largest gender pay gap, high rates of workplace discrimination, and a culture where their professional lives are often sidelined by tradition. Safety became a primary driver for the boycott. The rise of non-consensual deepfake pornography and hidden camera crimes convinced many women that traditional engagement with men carried a risk that no amount of social status could justify. Men, meanwhile, are trapped in a different vice. They face mandatory military service and a hyper-competitive economy with no state safety net, where the pressure to provide is absolute, even as opportunities for the middle class vanish. In this environment, marriage has turned into a survival audition. A man is often expected to secure a $1 million apartment in Seoul just to pass the entry requirements for a domestic partnership. As the financial bar for success moves out of reach, many men feel victimized by the system. Research shows that this insecurity often turns into resentment, with men viewing women's progress as a zero-sum threat to their own dwindling chances of survival. The social contract failed because it stopped being mutual. When both sides set their survival barriers so high that the other becomes a liability, the only logical move is to stop playing the game. America lacks a $1 million marriage audition, but it is experiencing the same mechanism of separation. In the U.S., the boycott isn't happening in the bedroom, it's happening in the institutions that govern public life. This shift is often described as the Great Feminization. The theory suggests that as institutions become majority female, the rules of engagement change, replacing traditional masculine operational norms with feminine ones. Traditional institutional norms, shown on the left, are built around open hierarchy and blunt competition, prioritizing objective truth even through direct conflict. On the right, feminine norms prioritize group cohesion and consensus, shifting the goal from finding the blunt truth to maintaining emotional safety. When feeling safe becomes the primary standard for an organization, any dissenting fact is treated as a personal attack. Because these spaces forbid direct physical conflict, they turn to social aggression, using HR departments and cancel culture to excommunicate anyone who threatens the group's emotional harmony. This logic was on display at Google when James Damore was fired. He authored a memo citing biological data to explain gender distributions in tech. He was removed because stating those facts was deemed a violation of the collective's psychological safety. This transition has reached the gatekeepers of information. As newsrooms like the New York Times reach a female majority, reporting has shifted away from objective data toward narratives built on vibes, emotional atmosphere, and identity. American men are increasingly retreating from these spaces. They see that traditional male ways of communicating and competing are no longer just discouraged, they are now systematically classified as toxic liabilities. South Korea shows us the final physical stage of the gender boycott, but the United States is already deep into the ideological stage. Both represent a world where the two halves of society no longer agree on how to live or work together. The consequence is a culture of mutual suspicion. In American workplaces, the replacement of objective standards with subjective feelings has created an environment of constant legal and social fear. This suspicion is fueled by the weaponization of institutional compliance. Even when high-profile gender discrimination lawsuits like Ellen Pau's fail in court, they succeed in reputation destruction, teaching organizations that avoiding offense is more important than rewarding merit. When a society prioritizes social engineering over competence, it erodes the trust required for any group to function. If men and women cannot even agree on the rules of a shared workplace, they lose the foundation required to build shared lives. The Western trend toward institutional separation is a leading indicator. If we continue to treat gender cooperation as a zero-sum game, we shouldn't be surprised when our demographics eventually mirror the empty bassinets of South Korea.